Hi everyone. So today we're talking about the 10 fetters. Fetters being translated as meaning obstacles. So the Pali word for fetters being samyojana, so obstacles towards enlightenment, of which there are 10 that we're talking about today. Now, there are 4 stages towards enlightenment. These 4 stages can be described by the first stage being sotapanna, or stream enterer, and then the second stage being sakadagami, which is the once returner. Third stage being anagami, meaning non-returner, and then the final stage is the arahat, of which there are in total, as I said, 10, the last stage containing 5 of those 10. So sotapanna meaning stream enterer, that means they're in the stream trying to cross to the far shore. And then sakadagami being once returner, meaning they'll be reborn only once and then they'll achieve enlightenment. The sotapanna, the stream enterer, will be reborn a maximum of 7 lifetimes. They may only be reborn once or up to 7 lives. Sakadagami, definitely once. Anagami, they won't be coming back. And then arahant, so they won't be coming back, meaning they'll achieve a rebirth in a higher realm and they won't be coming back into the lower realms, and they'll achieve enlightenment through that realm of existence. Arahat means they're not coming back at all into any realm whatsoever, and once they pass away into parinibbana, that's it, they're gone. They've checked out of Hotel Samsara. So what I find curious is the sotapanna stage, level 1, or the first fetter, and the 8th fetter, which is manya. So there is a lot of chatter across the different media, videos from different masters, as well as social media videos. The most recent one I recollect hearing about was of a gentleman claiming to be a sotapanna, stream enterer. However, he was called out by another practitioner on TV, national TV in Sri Lanka, I believe. And he was called out because this gentleman was claiming to be a sotapanna. Never a good idea to openly declare where you think you are on this ladder. He openly declared that he thought he was a sotapanna, and this supposedly more senior practitioner was asked, possibly a monastic, was asked on public TV, do you think this gentleman is past these first 3 fetters, therefore a sotapanna? And he said no, because he still has a personality, which is described here in Sakyaditi number 1. So therefore he cannot be a sotapanna. And this poor fellow who was declaring as such was put to shame. And that's unfortunate, because then if you look down fetters to number 8, manya, which translates to the personality features of conceit, arrogance, self-assertion, personality and character. So actually the full extent of personality does not extinguish until stage 8, manya. So only partially does personality change. In fact, it doesn't completely disappear. It may only partially disappear, but an aspect of personality certainly remains. One's path is very abruptly changed because delusion, a level of ignorance is extinguished. Our path becomes permanently tuned towards getting to the end here. And so what could be perceived as personality or one's lifetime habits noticed as being considerably altered. So that may be where a component of personality as listed here certainly changes. But personality as a whole gets extinguished only at stage 8, which is one of the 5 components of eradication at the Arahat stage. And that's where it says that conceit, arrogance, self-assertion, personality and character disappear entirely. So this first stage, Sotapanna stage, a stream enterer, that Sakaditi, where you have self-delusion, individuality, personality, superiority, inferiority complexes, superiority, inferiority, is extinguished. So then if we go back to our pictographic representation of consciousness, which we've discussed in a previous talk, we see that anatta, which is the concept of non-self, anicca, impermanence, and dukkha, suffering, all of those things, all of those can be realized on being mindful and noting the present moment, observing the present moment. The fact that anatta, non-self, is simply at the Sotapanna stage to be realized as the fact that we're really not in control. So many different factors that we've discussed in previous talks in this present moment, which is this big oval bubble, are playing, are factors that play here. Our past karma, positive or negative, our present circumstances that we choose to surround ourselves in. If we're not following the Eightfold Path, then are we surrounding ourselves with less than ideal circumstances that can lead to us committing akusala or bad karmic acts, negative seeds of karma? Then that's what will happen if we're not following the Eightfold Path or not being mindful of what we're doing and saying and the circumstances that we surround ourselves in, what profession we're in, what we're doing, how we're earning, what intent, etc., we have. Then at this point, there's so many different things at play we can see here. So we have all this karma manifesting right at this moment from our past. Again, we're just not in control of that. How that karma manifests in this present moment is really out of our control. Hinduism, before Buddha turned up and engaged in Hindu meditation practices and insight, asserted that it's like we're being in a bus on a set route. We have no control, absolutely no control at all. then Buddha turned up and he said, well, my enlightenment suggests that we do have a degree of control, and that's that Eightfold Path, which is to surround ourselves with positive or wholesome circumstances so that only wholesome karma can ideally present itself at this present moment. And therefore our conditions of existence are a lot more ideal, one would say. So the point is, all of what's interplaying here happens in a very random way that we are simply not in control of. Non-self. There is no element of self that we can grasp at and say, okay, I'm going to control this. I'd rather, I know that there's some bad karma in the past, but I'd rather not have that play out right now. I just want the good stuff. And then I'll deal with the other stuff down the track. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, a few years' time, no, the next decade. Sorry, but that's not how it works. It's simply out of our control. But the element of control that the Buddha was talking about is in the Eightfold Path. We surround ourselves in wholesome lifestyle, wholesome circumstances, wholesome friends, wholesome associations, wholesome living, and so on and so forth, as described in the Eightfold Path. So, but the point is, anatta, non-self, is about the fact that really we have largely no control over how our past karmic seeds bear fruit in the present moment. And therefore, as a result, then everything else, the chaos of all of this, plays out. Plus, we're in this thing, this continuum of consciousness, which is governed by a constant called time. And therefore, everything arises and ceases, as described in a previous video on dependent origination. If the circumstances are right for something to arise, it will arise, which again is the chance nature of karma manifesting. It will arise and it will also cease, which is the essence of impermanence. We are subject to and passengers in all of this, passengers of time, victims of time. Victim is probably a bit of a strong word, but the reality is this is a constant in our existence in samsara. Time is essentially something we cannot escape from while we're residing in samsara. Once we get out, one could suggest or argue that time no longer is a feature of our existence. There is no impermanence once you check out of samsara. Once you reach nibbana, these features of anatta, non-self, impermanence, anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, we check out of samsara. No longer features of our existence, which is described as the ultimate bliss of nibbana. None of this is a feature. There is just bliss. It is indescribable. There's no way of really describing this state of existence called nibbana. So, therefore, this is this first stage of enlightenment, the Sotapanna stage, is we become acutely aware or gradually aware. In fact, there are two ways of realizing this. Through a dry awakening, through intense mindfulness, or vipassana meditation, where it is described that people can have these epiphanic dry awakenings through focused contemplation and insight, or circumstances that may prevail, then one realizes this fact that we're just not in control of, not fully in control anyway. There is no self that we can grasp and, like I said, control and say, no, I don't want this right now, I want that right now, and I'll have that later. I know I've got to pay that bill, but I'll pay it later. We don't have that in life. We just don't. We simply cannot choose our circumstances, our fortune, in that way. We simply can't. That is non-self. We can have an influence on it, like I said, by following the Eightfold Path. But even then, there are karmic results that we cannot escape. If we, in samsara, if we have engaged in the 5 extremely severe unwholesome acts, paternicide, maternicide, killing our mother or father, father or mother, sorry, drawing blood from the Buddha, which we can't do anymore in 2026, causing a schism in the Sangha, which is to cause a disagreement in the Sangha, then that is considered an extremely unwholesome act. The 5th one is killing a monastic or an arahant, fully enlightened being. So as long as we stay away from those, then you're okay. But if we have committed one of those, even though we may lead a wholesome life and stay away from most of our bad karma, then if we've committed one of those 5 acts that are inescapable, the results of which are inescapable, then they will come forth just before our moment of parinibbana, where we check out of Hotel Samsara. That's the bill that the receptionist passes to you, and you've got to pay that. And that's just not something that's negotiable. And this famous story is the Buddha's right-hand man, arahant, was meditating in his kuti towards the end of his life. And robbers came and broke into his kuti, and he could see this happening, and using his special powers, he disappeared, got out of there. The robbers ransacked the monastic's kuti and the disciples' kuti, and then disappeared again. Then the next night, same thing happened. The robbers came, ransacked the place, disappeared. He came back. It was a total mess. And the next night, and the next night, and the next night. So he thought, why is this continuing to happen to me? So he tried to find out what's going on. And then he found out that in a previous life, he had committed maternicide. So an inescapable karmic act, the results of which are inescapable. You cannot do any wholesome act in any forthcoming lives after that to counteract that unwholesome karmic act. So he had to pay the price. So the robbers came the next day, and he decided, well, I'm just going to have to pay the price, but I will maintain perfect equanimity. I'll not harbour any ill will or anger towards these guys. I will just be a quiet observer and take the punishment I've got to take. So sure enough, the robbers came. They beat him to a pulp. Injuries that were simply not compatible with life. So he was effectively dying. The robbers left him for dead. He crawled towards the Buddha and asked permission to enter parinibbana, asked the Buddha for permission to die. at which point the Buddha noted, right, you've paid your price. As you were proceeding, you are allowed to go to Parinibbana. So I don't know if he said that, but the point is he had paid his price. The Buddha noted, yep, you will pass away blameless, as it were. So these are unwholesome acts that the karmic results of you cannot escape. Otherwise, you're free to go. So this first stage, like I said, is about escaping from or changing your path towards enlightenment, where you get elements of your personality that change, that adjust so that you are on the path at that point. Skeptical doubt, you've definitely eradicated that by this time. And then dependence on rites and rituals, like you're not going to sacrifice a rat thinking that's going to get you closer, are you? No, you've lost that ideology, that's gone. Then you've got the fourth stage, which is kama raga, which is this clinging towards sensuality, sense pleasures, sight, sound, taste, smell, hearing, and mind formations. So that tends to reduce. Okay, you'll lose your ability to really enjoy those sense pleasures. You'll still have some degree of enjoyment, but it very quickly fades. And you realize, this isn't really what it used to be. This is not as amazing as I thought it was. This is kind of, disappointing. More and more you become disenchanted. That's probably the most accurate description. A lot of people tend to use that description, disenchanted. You see that a lot in the translations, that word disenchantment. So that's reduced. And then what's eradicated at the fifth stage is ill will and anger. You just don't elevate to that, state of being where you are so enraged to the point where you entertain ill will. But then other descriptions, this has brackets ill will, but other descriptions talk about you losing other component, and this one also talks about ill will, but then other descriptions talk about anger as a whole, anger, ill will, hatred. You lose that negative state of mind that you may entertain towards another being, an event that's happening, anything. But repeatedly, there is this eradication of ill will that tends to be more recurring. It's all about ill will, where you may get a little bit upset and frustrated by the behavior of someone or the way things turn out in some circumstance because of what someone's done or just happenstance. You don't get angry as much as you used to, but you still get frustrated and a bit meh. But any ill will that you might entertain towards a being that may have been intrinsic towards that occurring, that doesn't happen anymore. If at all, you might feel some compassion. Oh, this poor so-and-so is amidst all of this, feel bad for them because they've caused this situation to occur, but they don't know what they've signed up for. An enormous amount of suffering in a future moment or lifetime. So you feel you feel compassion towards them. So you don't feel ill will. But like I said, other diagrams and translations talk about anger as a whole, anger, hatred, general negativity towards someone or something, and certainly ill will is a common denominator here at the 5th stage. And then you have these last 5 features, which once they're eradicated, you are an arahant. But these tend to just diminish over time. They don't just happen very quickly. They tend to just diminish over time. And once you're past all of this, then you are an arahant. And they have to all be eradicated to reach that stage. So 6 is desire for ruparaga or form, desire to be reborn in a form world, but in a higher realm. Aruparaga, desire for arupaloka, formless worlds. Effectively, these are high states of being in heaven realms, but you're still checked into Hotel Samsara, right? But once you really get completely sick, one might say, scared, fearful of how twisted this existence within this situation or circumstance called samsara, then you lose this desire to be born in these heaven realms of form and formless, rupa raga and arupa. So being the negative of any, it's a prefix in Pali that describes the negative of any state. So rupa and then arupa. So once you lose the desire to be in samsara, then one could argue you're past those stages. But don't be so sure, okay? Don't be so confident. And that brings us to conceit. This is where one has to be very careful. At stage 8, it's called manya, which translates to conceit, also arrogance, self-assertion, personality and character. So this is really the point at which personality and character becomes more and more and eventually defunct. It disappears. One loses this sense of self almost entirely, you could say. And then certainly conceit and arrogance disappear, and self-assertion. So that's that 8th stage. So personality, the point being personality and character only disappear at the 8th stage. Whereas some people out there are saying that, no, it should be gone at the 1st stage. A different concept is described here. And all the other diagrams about the 10 fetters talk about personality truly and character disappearing at stage 8, not stage 1, stage 8. So you can still be a Sotapanna and have some sense of self and personality and character, surely, right? So then you've got stage 9, Udacha, which is restlessness. This is a really, really challenging stage, as described by many, to get past. The restlessness is all-consuming. This character called Mara comes into play, described in other denominations as the devil, Lucifer, Beelzebub, etc., etc. He gets to play a lead role here, distracting you with all sorts of worldly distractions, problems, issues at an opportune moment for you to deal with. And it plays into the inherent restlessness of the mind at this point along the 10, which is counterintuitive, isn't it? You'd expect that to be gone way back here somewhere, but it's right at the end where Mara can see you blipping off the radar. He can't see you anymore. He's starting to panic. In fact, he starts to panic up here as well, because you start to blip on the radar up here, and whoa, you're disappearing. You're a stealth bomber. You're out. Okay, you're checking out, and he starts to throw everything at you. But fundamentally, getting back to the serious matter of the 10 fetters, your just mind becomes very restless here, carried away by events in your life, functions of your meditation, superpowers. That's why certain sects of Buddhism, such as the Mahasiddhaya or Vipassana denomination, dissuades people from spending too much time in jhana states, because that will eventually lead to the development of these different powers, or what's described as superpowers: clairvoyance, telekinesis, astral travel, etc., etc. And that can be very disturbing and put you off getting to the 10th stage and then Nibbana altogether. So one needs to be careful at that point. And then finally, avidya and nascience, unknowing, which again, you'd expect that to be way up here, which is ignorance. This is ignorance, where you finally are starting to understand the really profoundly bad consequences of acting without awareness, acting with ignorance. It's basically unknowing the consequences of your bad actions, or and engaging in activities that can result in bad results in the future. So that's stage 10. You'd expect it to be further up, but realistically, considering an arahant is all of these things put together and eradicated at once, it's fair enough that it's past this stage of ill will, it's past stage 5, and it's right at the end. But all of these have to happen together, so the nascience or unknowing disappears. At all of it's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but the point is all of these have to disappear and be eradicated for someone to be an arahant. So nascience, unknowing, that's an all-knowing state. That's level 10. Fetter number 10 is to know it all, to be perfectly, to be enlightened. Okay, Buddha is the perfectly enlightened one, but to be enlightened is at stage 10, where nascience and unknowing disappears. So there we have it. That's today's Dhamma talk. I hope that was helpful, and feel free to pop questions in the comments, and I'll do my best to try and answer them